We're facing some terrible things in Venezuela right now. America is, Russia's in there, Cuba's intervening. There's all kind of crap going on. And when you want to know what's happening, you bring in Dan Kovalik. He drives all the way up from Pennsylvania to join us. He's the author of this new book, The Plot to Overthrow Venezuela. Apparently, Dan, it's your contention that the U.S. is trying to take over Venezuela for their oil.
Yes. And in fact, and first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. I just want to say...
First-time guest.
Okay, yeah, and let me just say that actually, even though, you know, I'm from the left-wing part of the spectrum, I find that conservative talk shows are much more open to my point of view, and I appreciate that.
Not many of our guests are that open about being on the spectrum, but I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Sam Nunberg said that he thinks Robert Mueller's on the spectrum on the show.
So I appreciate it. So yes, we have to recall that in 2002, for example, that the U.S. actually supported a coup against Hugo Chavez, which was successful for about 2 days. He was kidnapped by elements of the military.
Excellent.
The U.S. helped instigate that and immediately recognized the coup government. Few other governments did. And the first thing the opposition did when they were in power is throw out the Constitution, disband the National Assembly, the Supreme Court, and fire all the governors and mayors that had been elected since Chavez was elected.
Sounds like what Gerald Nadler wants to do with the last U.S. election.
Yeah,
throw everything out, the Constitution, whoever was elected, chase down the president, try to impeach him.
Yeah, similar. So, but Chavez was brought back because the people demanded that he be brought back. But in any case, we have to recall that the U.S. for years has been trying to overthrow the government there, and that's true now. John Bolton's been very open about the fact that he's already been meeting with U.S. oil companies, already divvying up Venezuelan oil interests.
Weren't we doing that in Iraq, too? Isn't that why we went into Iraq?
Well, that's why we went into Iraq, and that didn't work out so great. I don't think we got a lot of oil out of that, but that was a big reason for that. And the interesting thing, well, let me say one other thing. And the U.S. has been imposing sanctions on Venezuela for years. And Jeffrey Sachs, you may know him. He's a famous economist out of Columbia University. He's estimated that since August of 2017 alone, so only, what, a year and a half, over 40,000 Venezuelans have died due to those sanctions, due to the inability to get medicine, food. And he predicts that over 40,000 will die this year. So,
are we saying, just so I'm clear, the analogy you're making is because Trump is sanctioning them, 40,000 people died.
That's right.
So he caused the deaths of 40,000.
That is right, and that's according to Jeffrey Sachs, a very pretty mainstream economist.
The House Judiciary Committee? Maybe they can look into this.
Well, no, but this is a very serious.
I'm saying it's serious, but I don't think our sanctions killed 40,000 people. I think a corrupt government who tied their currency to the price of oil when oil was at $80 and $90, and now they have 130,000% inflation, so their dollar's worth a penny. I think that's killing people, and that's the government's fault, not our fault for putting sanctions on them because they're doing business with people we don't want them doing business with.
Well, let me say a couple things about that, if I may. Certainly, the drop in oil has hurt. We have to go back to 2014, by the way. There's a great story in the Independent of London talking about the fact that, first of all, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia actually colluded to lower oil prices to hurt countries like Venezuela.
Is this another collusion probe developing?
Well, maybe.
Saudi Arabian collusion.
And very few people dispute that, so that has to be taken into account. But the other thing is, regardless of what's happening with the Venezuelan government, again, you got this very well-respected economist, Jeffrey Sachs, and I urge people to look at his report, which is on the website of CEPR, C-E-P-R, in which he estimates that because the sanctions have prevented people from getting HIV medicine, insulin, cancer medicine, and other types of medicines, that it has caused these deaths. And I do think that that needs to be considered. And I do think that the reason is for the oil. And again, I think people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo have been very open about that.
Well, so let me ask you, and but I first became a fan of your work, you highlighting the Russia probe.
Yes.
Even while all these people in the mainstream media were getting it wrong on Russia, you were one of the first people to get it right. And I hope if we have time later, we can talk about Russia. But with respect to Venezuela, you know, clearly there are some folks in the administration who, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, that seem really eager for some sort of an international skirmish, whether it's Iran or Venezuela. The president himself seems to have completely backed off of that, and he is getting hammered not by the war hawk right-wing media, but by the New York Times, the Washington Post, and MSNBC. Well, when did these guys become card-carrying members of the military-industrial complex?
Well, you raise a very important issue. So what happened recently in terms of Venezuela is that Trump, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, he said actually he had met with Vladimir Putin. They had a discussion about what was happening in Venezuela. And after that, he said that, look, he made a clear sign that he was not interested in a military intervention there. And he was backing off on that. Immediately, sources like NPR, which I listen to, the New York Times, jumped on him. The New York Times ran an article saying, oh, Trump promised to tame rogue states. Now they're taming him. And so, as you know, it was the liberals that jumped on Trump from the right, saying he's not militaristic enough. And I think this is insane. I mean, I think one has to have principles.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is basically running the Democratic Party now, if you ask me. She's got this whole nother wing there that's kind of the tail wagging the dog. And you know about our shirts here, we have an effort here to make AOC bartend again. And get her out of Congress and get some real representation over there in her district. But we're going to cover more about this stuff, all the stuff that's going on around the world, and we'll get into more Venezuela, the Mueller probe. I always reference Gerald Nadler in this show because he's doing a lot of crazy things. But I'm going to show you a picture of him that I want you to weigh in on also. Before we get out of this segment, Frankie, we got, oh, there he is. What do you think?
That's mean.
You think that's mean?
I do.
To say he looks like Jabba the Hutt. We got a lot of loyal viewers out there. They watch every day. They email me every day. They tell me all this great stuff. One is our friend Gus. He's a viewer out in Staten Island, tunes in every day. He loved the Biden fight. And, you know, the Biden and Bernie duking it out, which wasn't really Biden and Bernie.